Hello.
Ooh.
Live. It says live. See a picture of him. Do you hear me? Okay, very good.
Yossi?
Yeah. Let me ask you, Yossi. People are asking about the shiurim from before Pesach, how to actually see them. Is there a channel or something or a link you can send? We'll email links. Okay, perfect. Bakasha. לכן אין לכל המלך שלנו, לפי חלק זה רבנו שיש מפעילתנו בכלי שני שיעשו let us go, ומחת על הברכה. מה אתה אומר? What about it? Put what in the kli sheni? I didn't say put in the kli sheni. I said, no, the question was not to put in the kli sheni. The question was, well, that wasn't the question.
You said you can put it and then you can pour on top of it.
No. The question was to put it. No, that wasn't the question. The question was to put it on the bottom of the kli shlishi and pour onto it from the kli sheni, or to put the water into the kli shlishi first and then put it into the kli shlishi. That was the question. That was the question. I'm sorry?
To put on top of it.
Who says?
First the water and then add the sugar.
Who says?
According to this,
It doesn't say kli shlishi.
This whole Shabbat all the discussion about it.
Bakasha, I'm interested in seeing. Here it doesn't say a word about kli shlishi.
The basing on what the Alter
This is kli sheni. This is kli sheni. Kli shlishi. Okay, that's not the Alter Rebbe. You're saying something else?
Not to put the liquid on top of the sugar or the coffee.
Why not?
I want to see. That's not the Alter Rebbe. That's in somebody else's chiddush. I'm interested in seeing it. It's not here.
The base from the Alter Rebbe.
I don't see it here. If you show it to me, I'll see it.
This from the city, from the city.
I understand. This is kli sheni. This is kli sheni. This is not kli shlishi. No. Doesn't say a word about kli shlishi.
What?
Doesn't say kli shlishi. Where does it say kli shlishi? I mean, do I need more glasses? I don't know. I'm sorry?
Are we not confident something that's called a bashal even in the kli shlishi?
Is coffee kali abishal? Coffee's already cooked. Fakert, it's already cooked. Sugar is also already cooked. Okay.
Okay.
Can. That's not what it means. Exactly.
So if it's not where is he going?
He doesn't talk about what to do. The machmer tavel bracha is a kli sheni, not a kli shlishi. Exactly. If you want to, he doesn't say yes, he doesn't say no. With pashtus, yes. Shulchan Aruch doesn't say a word about kli shlishi. Doesn't say a word about a kli shlishi in the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, my friends. Any reason not to use a kitchen aid for milchik and fleishik with a different bowl and beater? No. No reason not to. Yossi, the motor obviously doesn't become milchik or fleishik. It's the bowls and the beaters that are an issue. But the machine you can use for different ones, no problem. All right, so we're middle of Shir 12, Tata Gavar.
Are we going to see?
I'm going to Of course.
First,
Now, first we're going to finish year 12, and then we'll go to the notes that I emailed out. And if we have a chance to start year 13, then we'll start year 13. All right, my friends, I was stuck at 10 o'clock on proof number 4, and I was saved by the bell. And now we can get on to answering it. All right, so just to review exactly what's going on. We have a machloikus between the Riva and the Ri. And in case this is sounding a little bit foggy to any of you, I'll just briefly refresh you. We said that in the Gemara it says, according to Shmuel, which the halacha is like him, Tata Govar, the bottom one wins. Meaning to say, if the bottom one is hot, it heats up a cold thing that is poured into it or onto it. If the bottom one is cold, it cools down the hot thing that is poured into it or onto it. So that's what Shmuel says. Now, the Gemara brings 2 brises to support Shmuel, which is why we said we paskin like Shmuel, even though normally we paskin like Rav in matters of Isser. Oh, Shalom Aleichem. How are you? One of the Rosh Hashivas said, by the way, that the best time to learn is after you've had your first kid. Because the wife is in the hospital for a few days and there's no other kids at home. So you can learn for a day and night for 2 or 3 days. Not yet. I'm getting it ready. I'm priming it.
If I leave suddenly, that's not.
don't leave suddenly.
All right. So we're in Shir 12, and we're discussing Tata Govar. So we said the Gemara says 2 brises to support the opinion of Shmuel that Tata Govar. And the words of the brises are as follows. Cham letoich cham, also. Cham surtzoinen letoich cham, aser. Hot into hot, everything is aser. Cold into hot, everything is aser. Hot into cold, and cold into cold, you just wash it off. But then the Gemara says it can't be hot into cold that you just wash it off. It's impossible as it's going in, as it's cooling it off, it must absorb a little bit. So it means that you have to cut off a peel's worth. Okay, so that is one brisa. And then the next brisa basically says the same thing, except that it talks about milk and meat. So instead of 2 pieces, presumably one kosher and one not kosher, it talks about milk and meat. So Tosfos asks, why do we have to list both brises? Once we support Shmuel from one, that's it. Not necessary to quote the other. Now you can't ask a question, by the way, on the brisa why there are 2 brises, because the brisa is often written by different people. There was Reb Chia's, there was Reb Oishia's, there was Bar Kapara. Different Tanoim wrote their brises. So you can't ask different times or different people, whatever. So they had their versions. You can't ask why one wrote what somebody else wrote. But the Gemara doesn't have to quote every brisa. There must be something new being taught by the second brisa. So this is where Tosfos comes up with the Chiddush, which is in the name of Rabbi Tam and that of Ri, that the point of the second brisa is that only the meat has to be peeled. The milk, it doesn't say anything about the milk. And therefore the understanding is that the milk is completely mutter. It's no problem. Exactly. That's the opinion of Ri and Rabbi Tam. You don't have to figure out how much is the peel of the milk compared to the meat. You don't have to figure it out. You just, it's okay. It doesn't have to be batel b'shisha. That's what the Ri and Rabbi Tam hold. And obviously we must say, according to their opinion, it's actually not so obvious. There's different ways of understanding their opinion. Let's just say, the way that we mentioned yesterday, is that the idea of peeling off is like a chumrah. It's like a stricter, it's a thing we do because we're strict, because maybe some of it went in. We're not sure 100%, maybe, maybe not. So when it comes to something that we can peel, we make you peel. When it comes to something you cannot peel, like the milk, we'll let it pass. No, it's not so bad. That's the simple way. There is another pshat that I'll tell you soon, which is the Chavas Das. You know what I'll tell you now? Chavas Das says something interesting. Chavas Das says, and this is actually to explain why the Mechaber does not necessarily agree with the Ramah. What do I mean? The Mechaber says that the milk is completely mutter, meaning to say he's paskening like the Ri. You don't have to figure out 60, nullified 6, you don't have to figure that out. But he doesn't say anything about the meat. If you cook the meat without peeling it, if you need to figure out that it's batel b'shishim. He doesn't discuss that case. He only discusses the milk. Ramah says, takes it one step further. Not only is the milk mutter, but even if you took the meat, which you were supposed to peel, and you didn't peel it, and you cooked it, and now what are you going to do? Ramah says, no problem. It's okay. You can eat it. You don't have to nullify it in 60. So the Chavas Das says, the Mechaber doesn't necessarily agree with the Ramah. It's not the same. In other words, the Ramah holds that the whole idea of a peel, like we said, is it's only a chumrah. If you can do it, do it. If you can't do it, it's okay. But you have it, it's okay. The Chavas Das says the Ramah might hold, the Mechaber might hold something else. The Mechaber might hold as follows. When something is a liquid, it doesn't really have a surface. So there's never really a time that it gets a certain part of it that gets that taste. In other words, the taste that goes from one to the other, when the top one is hot and the bottom one is cold, is a very minute amount. That it's certainly going to be batel b'shishim in the whole thing. There's no question about it, because it's such a small amount. Now, if it would stay within the surface area, in one area, in that area, it's not going to be batel b'shishim, even though it's a very small amount, but that's a small area. So in that small area, it's not going to be batel b'shishim, right? And therefore it'll become aser. And now once it's aser, now it's chaticha nasis nevela, perhaps, right? That's actually a question. If we say that a peel can become a nevela, or does it have to be a whole piece? But you could argue that perhaps even that peel becomes like a nevela, it becomes a forbidden thing. And then if you didn't peel it and you cooked it, well, maybe you need 60 times the peel. Even though the original taste of the milk that went into it is so small that once it spreads out, it's gone. But once you say chaticha nas nevela, you don't need the taste of the original. You just need the taste of the peel, right? And that times 60 is bigger. So that's when it comes to a surface that is a contained surface. But if it's a liquid, there is no surface. So the taste, that small taste, spreads immediately throughout the milk, and it's for sure batel b'shishim. So that's the argument of the Chavas Das.
So the case is that milk is a couple of drops on top of it. And peeling the drop, where the drops fell, and that's it.
If it's only a couple of drops, then you don't have to peel.
That's
That's true. If it's only a couple of drops and it's not like a stream of milk. I mean, what we were discussing until now was like a stream of milk. So it seemed like you're going to take the whole surface of the meat off because you don't know where it touched exactly. But if it's just a few drops, then you just take off where it
floats the whole thing. You don't have to take the peel from all over.
Wherever it touched. If you're not sure, just take the peel off the whole thing.
Excuse me for asking, because I missed it yesterday. How long does it have to sit for it to transfer taste? Is it immediate?
As far as we know, it's immediate. We did not learn a specific amount.
Does it change if it sits longer? Does it change the peel?
It's cold.
Does it change if it sits longer? You mean, does it go deeper than a peel? No. Because the point is that the bottom one is cold, right? We're talking about a case where the bottom one is cold. And the Gemara says that tata or govar, that means the cold one overpowers the hot one. So the fact is that even if it sits there, the halacha states that the cold one overpowers, so it cools it off. Now, you'll say, well, maybe it's still hot after 2 minutes, so you see it hasn't cooled it off. Okay, it's working on it. It's working on it. But the point is, since it's the one that overpowers, it doesn't become usser, because it's working on the other thing. It's not worked on itself, except for the peels layer, where there's a bit of an exchange. Other than that, it doesn't get affected by the thing. So maybe even if it doesn't cool off for 5-10 minutes, doesn't make a difference. The halacha says that the bottom one does not get affected.
What is cases it says it's going to be asked? It's only asur la'achil. It's going to be no benefit from it, yeah? It's not beautiful.
I read something about that. I have to remember where it was.
About the peel?
What?
About the peel that you cannot benefit?
No, the general.
I read something about it. I think it was in the Badei Shulchan, but I'm not sure. Maybe it was a BChalav. I think it was a BChalav actually. BChalav says that here's the thing: whenever it is a irui shenifsak hakiluach, there's a difference whether the pour is connected to the kli rishon that you're pouring it from, or it's not connected. Okay? If it's connected, then there are some opinions, Rabbi Tam himself, even though he's lenient about the peel of the milk in this case, but Rabbi Tam himself holds that if it's a connected pour, then it has the power to cook a kedei klipa. Mamish to cook. So in that case, that would be aser mid'oraisa, perhaps, because it's bishul. Torah says don't cook. It's cooking. Whereas
when you say cooking, even if it's klipa, it's being like more than machal be'dosai or less than that. Because if it's less than that, it's still not going to make in the right so much. So my question is really, even if it says they're going to be cooked the klipa, to which level?
Could be Rabbi Akiva discusses that. I don't remember. Give me a second. Big chiddush in Rabbi Akiva here, actually. Mm-hmm. Mm. The Prima Godim and Ricky Baker both say it's the Iraisa. They don't really get into the question of Michael ben Rusoi. It could be that they consider that peel to be cooked. So I think I did see somebody who discussed the Michael ben Rusoi question, so I'm not 100% sure, but they themselves, the Prima Godim and Ricky both say that it's the Iraisa. It could be, I think I saw somebody discuss this, so I'm not 100% sure, but it could be that they're saying that even if the meat doesn't cook, but the milk, I mean, it's no big deal milk is edible anyway, you know what I mean, even before. So Ben Drusoi is happy to drink the milk. Halachically, it's considered cooked, appeals depth of it. I'm saying if you hold like the Rivo, if you hold like Ri and a bit of Tam, anyway, the milk doesn't need a klipa. You don't have to worry about it. But if you hold that the milk needs a klipa, meaning say you need 60 times the klipa, so the milk itself can get that amount of the milk.
The cases that you're saying that the milk is also and the meat is also, it's also from the rice, it's also from the Rabbanan. So like this, if you're only with the Rabbanan, it's going to be mutar ba'ana. So I just don't know if it's going to be also from the rice, but in the cases that
the pashtus is also midaraisa. The pashtus. In a case of let's put it this way: in case of tato govar, right? Case of tato govar, so the whole thing is also but pashtus is daraisa. In a case of, in other words, if the bottom one is hot, a case where it's only a klipa, so then the poskim differentiate. Let me just say this out clearly. Again, if the top one is hot, there's a difference whether it's connected to the kli rishon where it's coming from or not. If it's connected, then it could be that it actually cooks. If it's not connected, the poskim say it does not actually have the power to cook. It only has the power to impart and absorb flavors. In Hebrew, the language is maflit and mavliya. It gives flavor and it absorbs flavor, but it doesn't actually cook. So in that case, it would not be a da'iraisa, because it would be mutar ba'ana, correct. In a case where it's actually connected, so then Rabbi Kiva and the Prima Godim both say that it's da'iraisa, according to Rabbi Tam at least, who holds that it can cook if it's still connected. The question is, if it's not fit for ben rusoi, in other words, the bottom one is hot, let's say. The bottom one is hot, but maybe it's not even fully cooked yet. It's in the middle of being cooked. It's not edible yet. So do you say that something is aser mid'oraisa for basar BChalav in terms of it being aser ba'ana even before it's fully cooked? I'm not sure. I did see that, but I'm not sure. I don't want to say 100%.
How do you say that term, maflit?
Maflit and mavliya. It gives over flavor and it absorbs flavor. Okay, so the point is we have the opinion of the Rabbeinu Tam, who says that the reason it says the second case in the Gemara is to teach you that the milk is okay. That's how the Machaber paskins. And like I said, the Ramah goes one step further and says not only is the milk okay, but even the meat is okay, even if the klipa got mixed back up and cooked together and chopped up and cannot be found. Okay. Now, before we continue in the shir, I just want to mention what Rabbi Akiva Eger says in defense of the Rivah's position. The Rivah says what? Exactly. The Rivah says that you need 60 times in the milk, more so than the theoretical peel of the milk. Imagine one layer of milk enveloping the piece of meat. You can visualize the milk around the meat, that peels layer, and then, compute it times 60. Otherwise, it's no good. Now, according to the Rivah, why did the Gemara have to say two cases? Why did the Rabbeinu Tam says, and the Re says, the second case is to tell you that the milk is okay. The Rivah says, no, the milk is not okay. So why did it have to say two cases? What is the chiddush of the second case according to the Rivah? Why mention meat and milk in addition to two pieces of meat? So, the BChalav Eger says, I'm sorry, what? And other Isurim or not?
Yeah, but you mean meat that is kosher and not kosher, is what you say.
Kosher or not kosher is also in the Raisa. The flavor of kangaroo meat and
Yeah, but you say that Basar b'Halav comes from an entity specialty.
Okay.
Never could go back.
Therefore what? But what's the halachic difference?
That maybe you have to learn the non-kosher meat with the kosher meat. You could reverse it.
I mean, maybe you can, maybe you can't, but that you don't see in the Gemara one way or the other.
That was, I guess.
Sorry? No, we said that according to the Rabbeinu Tam, the reason the Gemara brings the Bryce about Basar BChalav is to tell you that the chalav is mutter. That's his proof that the milk is mutter. Because why does the Gemara have to bring the Bryce about milk and meat? When it comes to Tata law, we just had a Bryce at top and bottom, two pieces of meat. Why do you have to mention it again with milk and meat? So he says the chiddush is that the milk is mutter, you don't need 60 times the klipa of the milk. That's all if you hold like the Ri and Rabbeinu Tam, that you don't need. But if you hold like the Rivah that you do need, so you're back to the question, why does the Gemara have to say that case? What's the chiddush of that case?
Like we're going to read in a second, it sinks in.
So that's one thing, BChalav Eger says. One thing is that it's telling you a chiddush, because when it's two solid pieces, the one on the bottom stays on the bottom, the one on top stays on top. However, when it's a liquid falling onto a solid, so the liquid goes on bottom as well. So maybe the liquid should become the bottom.
But it's not the bottom. That's what the rule is, the first bottom, not the second.
That's the chiddush. That's exactly the chiddush, is what Rabbi BChalav Eger says. It's teaching you that chiddush, that even though it goes under the meat, but because it came from the top, it still has the din of being on the top. That's one possible explanation. Another possible explanation is there actually is a chiddush in liquid and solid over solid and solid. Because liquid, you don't have to draw anything out of the liquid. The liquid is there ready to go in. You understand? When it comes to two solid pieces, so you would think it's harder for, let's talk about a case where it's the bottom one is cold. And the top one is going to get a little bit of taste from the bottom one and vice versa. So you might think if it's liquid and solid, then it's going to go in up heels depth because the liquid it's mamish ready to go in. So even though the bottom one is winning and it's cooling it off, but it goes in. But it comes to two solid pieces, so maybe it's not going to have the power to take out the liquid from the solid and put it into itself. Because it's like an extra action. It's not just to absorb it, it's to take it out and absorb it. You understand? And then if we would only say it over there, you might say, well, when it comes to two solid pieces, that it has to take it out and absorb it, that's why it only goes in a peel's depth. But a liquid that's ready to go in, maybe it goes in more than a peel's depth. Maybe it goes in a finger's depth or so on, because you don't have to pull it out. It's ready to go in. You understand? So each one has a chiddush. The chiddush that it goes in only a peel's depth, even if it's a liquid, and the chiddush that it has the power to bring in a peel's depth, even if it's two solids. So those are two answers of Rabbi Akiva Eiger.
But this concept of clipper is going to be with only the surface, like smooth.
And not what?
Not like, not smooth.
Cracked?
Or something like
Cracked surface?
Am I audible?
surface, like
Cracked surface is going to be discussed, actually. Cracked surface is absolutely going to be discussed, and we're going to say that it goes all the way in.
doesn't know how this is the cut.
I'm sorry?
Doesn't matter if you know that the cut is
What do you mean cut?
How deep is the cut?
cracks. You know the crack is not going,
Let me just read the Shulchan Aruch for you.
Can you hear me now, by the way?
Now I just
Yes.
put my volume up and I can, but let me just, I'm going to listen to you in a second. Let me just look at number 7. Whatever, we'll see later. But I'm saying, the fact is, he says, if it has cracks or spices, so then the whole thing is also. So we're going to see later about that in Seiv Zion. But yes, the fact that it's cracked means that it can go deeper than just the surface. Yeah, see, what do you say?
Nothing. I just wanted to know whether you could hear me. Because I wasn't
Now I can hear you. Loud and clear.
Very good.
All right. So
I am actually struggling a little bit because I think I missed some key stuff yesterday.
I will not argue with that, but it's all in the shear. It's all in note in shear 12.
Yep, I've skimmed through it, and it's a little bit confusing when you skim it. So I'm piecing it together.
Okay. Sorry, I did not record it. I didn't bring my recording device yesterday, so
Not a problem.
this is what it is. This, yes, he's recording this, yes?
Yes, I am.
Very good. Okay. So the Taz is not happy with the psak of the Mechaber and the Rama, because he says, I have many cases, 6 in fact, where we see that klipa is aser even b'diavad. Again, the Mechaber says the milk is mutter. You don't need 60 times the imaginary peel of the milk. The Rama says even the meat is mutter if you didn't peel it and you cooked it as is. The Taz says, what do you mean? Why are you saying that the peel is mutter b'diavad and you don't have to worry about 60 times the peel when I have many cases where you do?
So, but it's only arguing with the Rama, no.
Actually, like I mentioned, the Chavaz Da'as says that it's not really a question of the Mechaber, because it could be the Mechaber says what he says because there is no peel, because it mixes in right away, so it doesn't get a chance to make the peel also. So it's not really a question of the Mechaber, it's more on the Rama.
all those cases, the person did it, the one that poured the milk, or the other is a visual.
If it's not nifsek hakiluach,
What is that?
if it's connected, if it's a connected pour,
So it's going to be like a cooked meat already, completely cooked, is visual or visual.
we said b'pashtus yes, that if they weren't cooked together, it could still be bishul achar bishul. If they were cooked together. L'cha'ura, yes. L'cha'ura, yes. Now, when it comes to a piece of meat, by the way, the piece of meat is never connected. Think about that. The milk, you can pour it from a kli rishon. It's liquid, so it can be connected to the kli rishon. The meat, it's a piece, can never be connected. You understand? So it's not going to be d'oraisa. It's not going to have the power to cook. Maflit, mavliya, yes, to give taste, to receive taste, but it's not going to have the power to actually cook because it's not connected. Yes.
No. Hassel, say never know at the beginning, the first time when you put it, the meat from the original, that's it. This gets disconnected. Right?
Oh, you mean if you have it like right close to it?
No, you have it in the pre-ritual, and you throw it in the other one that is the other meat. And at that time it's connected. Then,
If it's a bendable piece, you're saying. Normally a piece falls out, so it's either connected or not. You're saying it could be coming out the side and still be connected. That's true. It is possible. No, it is. It is a nice, a nice cut of brisket. You know, it could be. I hear. Okay. So we were going through the proofs. First of all, in Siman 69, we spoke about a kli that became asur because it was used for salting. 69, Samach Tes.
Repeat.
I'm just going through the proofs. In Siman Samach Tes, in 69, we spoke about the keli that was used to salt, and we said that if it was then used with hot food, you need 60 times the peel. Why? Well, why do you need 60 times the peel if it's b'diavad, it's mutter according to the Rambam? Question number one. Question number two is that we see coming up in Halacha 5 that in the case where the juice comes out of meat, you salted meat, and the juice came out of the meat, the salty juice came out and it fell on a keli. Either kasher the keli, sand down the keli if it's wood, or throw it out if it's kli cheres.
It's good.
So break it in other words. But why? B'diavad. It's b'diavad. You're gonna have to throw it out. We according to the Ramah, it should be okay b'diavad. No, we see it's not okay b'diavad. Siman 96, we're gonna learn about sharp things. And we're gonna see that one opinion says when you cut something sharp, the taste only spreads kadei klipa. So why is the entire object asur in the case of this particular sharp spice, chiltis? The answer is because it's very small, so it spreads to the whole thing. And in that case, it makes other things asur. It itself is asur, it makes other things asur, even though it's only a peel. So we see even b'diavad, it's a problem. Siman 95, the Ramah says that if you pour water from a meat pot into a milk pot, the water is asur even though the irui is only asur kadei klipa.
From the meat to the milk, yeah?
Yeah. I think they got it wrong here, and that's why you had a question, which I couldn't answer. But if we just change one word in the shear, I'll be saved from your question. Here's what it should say. There are more holes. Number 4. This is on page 92. Here's what it should say. In Siman 95:3, there are more holes that if water is poured from a meat pot onto a milk pot, the pot is asur. Not the water is asur. Water is asur. I mean, who's drinking water from meat pot, milk pot? What does that mean? It's not the water is asur. The pot is asur. Lo, זה טעות. It's a mistake. Ken. The kli becomes asur, meaning to say the kli needs kashering.
This is just plain boiling water.
Just plain boiling water. And it's ben yoimoy meat, ben yoimoy milk. What's happening is you have a mixture of meat taste and milk taste. This is a big difference between Sfardim and Ashkenazim, by the way.
So even if you can remove the klipa from the pot.
Give me a second. 95.3.
So we take off the klipa. So we're going to do all the kelly.
How come it's not nut or nut?
Because there are more holes that this case is not nut bar nut because the tastes mix directly. It's only nut bar nut if it is not touching, if the water is not touching the milk and meat keli at the same time. So then the milk and meat taste don't mix directly. If they're touching both at the same time, so then the milk taste and the meat taste can meet up without the help of the water. They can meet up directly. That's the Ramah's Chiddush, the Mechaber.
Without the help of the water, but the water is what's making the bridge between them.
Right, but it doesn't need to go and spread out in the water. It can be, the taste can go directly within the water, you understand? It can go directly from one to the other. There can be a spurt, an imaginary spurt of flavor using the water as a bridge, but directly from one to the other, if they're both touching at the same time. Whereas if they were not touching at the same time, so then it first goes into the water and it's separate, and then another taste comes into the water, and that's not Barnat.
I'm really struggling a lot with that logic.
All right, you have till Siman 95 to figure it out, so it's nothing to worry about.
You can read the Siman?
Yes. Siv Gimel. Karish al Basar shehutchu b'yorach haleves b'chamen. This is the Machaber. Shayat zeleres bo. Anafilu shneim b'nei yomen mutter mishum david le'neisen tam bar neisen tam. The Torah. Im hoye shuman davok b'hen tzorach shi b'mayim shishim k'negam mashas shuman shal pnei hakayim. V'yesh oisma afilu ein shuman davok b'hen elam ken echon hakelim einan b'nei yomen meblias kli rishon. V'oz kol hakelim mutarim. V'amayim noigin b'hem isur l'chatchila. אבל אם שניהם בני יומון והדיח אויסן ביחד בכלי ראשון הכל אסור. ואוכי נוהגים מן השמש. ודווקא שותחו יחד או כלי ראשון. המהותחו זה אחר זה בכלי שני אפילו ביחד הכל שורי. Here's the important part. Ready? ואם עירה מכלי ראשון של בשר על כלי חלב, דינוי ככלי ראשון ואויסר אם היה בן יומוי.
So it doesn't mean over here. Oyser Maya Ben Yomo.
Huh?
Over here it says like you read Oser Maya Ben Yomo. So if it was a Ben Yomo, it's not Oser.
ואוסר אם היה בן יומו.
Then it's not.
They're not.
So over here it doesn't say anything.
Yeah, that's what it means. All right, so the point is that in this case, the bottom keli is going to become aser, and in some cases it's going to be also even b'diavad. Like we said before, kli cheres, it cannot be kasher. You're going to have to throw it out. So we see that a klipa is asering even b'diavad.
The clipper is ushering?
One second. Yes? Yeah.
So if it's not mitmasher, so no you're going to be the rishon.
No, we're talking about if it's connected. We're talking about here that it's connected. It has to be connected. That's what it says in 95. The whole point of only way that it can become aser is if it's connected. We'll see it over there, because otherwise it's not barnat, because the water doesn't have any actual milk in it or any meat in it, just the taste of it. That's called not barnat. But if it's connected to both, then it can be a problem. Yossi, what were you going to say?
Where's the clipper in this instance?
The klippa is in the bottom keli. The bottom keli is cold. You're pouring onto it hot water, so the only depth it could go in is a klippa.
Into the keli?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, number 5 in Siman 98.
If the keli is also the water, also going to be also?
Yeah. The water is going to be aser unless you have 60 times that. Unless you have 60 times the klipa in the water. In Siman 98:4, the Ramah says that if a keli absorbed issa through salting, you need 60 against the klipa. Okay, that's pretty clear. Yes. Number 6, Isavata says if you put something that is also kadei klipa into a hot pot, you need 60 against the klipa. Okay, all pretty clear proofs that you need 60 against the klipa. Therefore, the Taz argues on the Ramah The Taz holds that 60 is needed against the klipa in both questions. This also contradicts the Mechaber who holds that in the question of the milk, the Isser klipa is bottle in Roiv, the majority against it. Okay.
So really, the Taz is being raya from the Rabbi himself, and he contradicted going against the Rabbi.
Correct.
Based on what he said in different places.
Correct. That's the thing about the Taz. The thing about the Taz is he's happy to argue with the Ramah and paskin like the Riva against Rabbi Natan. But it doesn't really explain the Ramah's opinion. You understand? The Ramah himself clearly does not agree with the Taz. Because the Ramah says all the things he says in those places where you need 60 against the Klipa. And here he says not. Obviously he has a reason for it. Taz says no. Ramah made a mistake. Made a mistake, that's it. What he says in the other places is true. What he says here is he got it wrong.
So now, what, according to the Ramah, why is the custom different in the first case?
Well, the Shach has an answer for it. The Magen Avraham also has an answer for it. The Taz is happy to say the Ramah made a mistake, and that's it. Just give me a moment, please. Hello? Hi. Hi. What does your father say? Right. My feeling is that it's not kedai to postpone, but let me make a call and call me back in 2 minutes, please, because I don't know if I can call you on this number. You got my message on WhatsApp last time? Okay, fine. I'll send it to you on WhatsApp. Okay, no problem. I have to make a call for a shayla that's very time sensitive. Sorry.
Your father was passed away, no?
Yeah, he passed away in Sukkot. Pesach, that's what I meant. Chol HaMoed.
No vodka.
There's vodka, no.
Not me. Oh, yeah. Isn't he considered?
He was nurse.
Oh, yeah.
Big boss.
Yeah, I heard. I wasn't sure if it was his father or who.
Oh,
Grandfather? How old?
200,000 people there.
He's in his 90s, no?
88.
88?
98.
98? As a result, Kamala Hora.
And those also is very listening to. From the celebration.
Yeah. Big guy.
It's a story that was told by the Rabbi and our Wilson and our reaction. Yes, these are thinking of banning television. They are not allowed to look at television. See television.
What is that?
Banning. They said we're afraid, yeah, but you make that rule, then it's just see it. Careful what you're going to do. I agree with you. Careful. I'm sorry.
You're not eating your share.
Yes. Only as one made that. No, I'm telling you, do you want to eat cookies? On a diet. Smoke some. Yeah, my wife says.
All right, sorry about that. Just a funeral arrangement that has to be made a bit of a timely manner. Okay. We continue and say the shach. A few lines from the end makes the difference between the case where the meat was cooked without removing the Eser Klippa and the case where the Klippa became mixed up with the milk.
93.
The shach.
Shach 8.
You have it? Again, the shach makes the difference between the case where the meat was cooked without removing the Eser Klippa and the case where the Klippa became mixed up with the milk. If the meat was cooked without removing the Klippa, 60 is needed in the meat against the Klippa. This is like the Taz. The reason is because the Klippa is nicker, recognizable, it is identifiable. Therefore, as a clear Isser needs to be negated in 60. But in the case of cold milk, that hot meat fell into the Klippa of milk, that becomes Asr, gets mixed into the rest of the milk. Therefore, the Shach holds that 60 is not needed. According to the Shach, anything that is Asr K'dei Klippa and becomes Nivlal, mixed into something else, is batal even though it was nicker at one time. He explains that the Ramah is speaking where the meat was broken up in a way that the Klippa can no longer be removed, and therefore 60 is not necessary. Okay, my friends, listen carefully to the Shach's answer. The Shach has an answer that resolves the contradiction in the Ramah. rather than saying like the Taz that the Ramah got it wrong, and we have to paskin that the Riva is right. Like all the other cases of the Ramah, where you need 60 times the klipa, unlike the Ramah here, the Shach says it depends. If the klipa is recognizable and it's still here, I'll tell you. If it got chopped up, you made ground beef out of it, you put it in the grinder, and now you have beef patties. There is no klipa anymore. You had it, but now you don't have it. So therefore, we're going to say it can be bottled. If, however, you have the klipa still visible, but the taste of the klipa was mixed in, meaning to say you have the same exact piece of meat, except that first it wasn't cooked. Now you cooked it. In other words, it was raw, hot milk poured on it, so now the klipa of it becomes asr. Then you went ahead and cooked it. Still, the klipa is still there, but you cooked it. So the flavor of the klipa sunk in the whole way. So that now you're going to need 60 times the klipa. Why? Because you have a visible asr aspect of it. It's visible, it's still there. So therefore we can't ignore it. We can't say, well, it's only a klipa, it's only a chumrah. No, you have, even though it's a chumrah and it's a klipa, we have it here. We have the actual forbidden item here. You can't just ignore it. You have to say it needs 60. No, I'm talking about it started out regular piece of meat, and then it became asr, regular piece of meat, smooth surface, became asr, and then you didn't realize, and you put it in the grinder, and now by the time you realize it's already mixed up. That's the case that the Ramah says you don't need bittul b'shishim. So if you look back in all the cases that the Taz brought, I mean, Pashas not. I mean, the grinder is cold. Grinder is cold. I mean, maybe you have to clean it. You have to clean it well. But Pashas not the kasha. So the point is, if you look back in all the cases that the Taz brought, there was always an actual item, an actual klipa that was still visible. Like for example, in the case of exactly, the case where you salted it on a plate, the plate is still there. In the case where you cut the whatever it is, that vegetable, that's still there. Exactly.
So it doesn't disappear. It gets completely mixed and can recognize it. But nothing, the script doesn't disappear. When you chop it, it's there.
Yeah, but you can't see it. Exactly. I mean, it's always there. It's always there, but you can't see it. The Shach even adds one more case to the ones that the Taz brings. He adds the case where you cooked think about it for a second. One second, please. Here it is. If you salted the hindquarters of the animal together with a gid hanosha. Gid hanosha is asur, of course, but because you salted it together, so the taste of the gid hanosha went a klipa into the rest of it. Only a klipa. Salting is only a klipa. We're going to see about it soon. The very next halacha, we're going to see that salting generally only gives a klipa. We're going to see maybe there's exceptions. Generally, salting only has the power to go in a klipa. So then you took it, before you realized there's a problem, you went ahead and cooked it. So you need 60 times the klipa. 60 times the gid, of course. I mean, the gid itself has not flavor, but 60 times the whatever it is together with the gid. The shuman hagid, the fat of the gid, 60 times that, plus 60 times the klipa. So you see, You need 60 times the klipa. Again, the shach says. Over there, the klipa is still there. You didn't chop it up. You just cooked it. So you can see the klipa. And now the flavor of the klipa spread. You need 60 times. This is the answer of the shach. Comes along the Magen Avram in Hilchas Pesach and gives a whole nother answer, my friends. However, Rabbi Kiva Eger and the Sifsei Das bring in the name of the Magen Avram that only if the klipper is also because of a chumrah, as in our case, is it bottle. But if the klipper is also me'ikar adin, 60 is needed against it, even after it was nivlal. Halacha l'mais is like the Magen Avram. The Magen Avram has a whole other answer, my friends. Here in the Shir, the Pirchei Shoshanim Rabbi, one second, let me just explain. The Pirchei Shoshanim Rabbi doesn't really spell out what the Magen Avram is out to accomplish. Here's what the Magen Avram is saying. The Magen Avram is saying, I will resolve the contradiction differently. The way I will resolve it, he says, is there's a difference whether the klipa is actually asr min hadin, whether it's actually forbidden by the letter of the law, or whether it's only asr as a chumrah, as an extra thing. In our case, it's only a chumrah, because we're talking about basar BChalav. Basar BChalav midayrais is only with cooking. And over here, it's not cooking, because we're talking about a case where it's not connected. The pour is not connected. That's what the Magen Avram says. We're talking about such a case. The piece of meat is for sure not connected to the kli rishon. But even the pour, we're talking about where it's not actually connected to the kli rishon. So therefore, it only is maflit and mavli. It only exchanges flavors. It's not actually cooking. So it's only like a chumrah. It's not me'ikar adin. It's not by the letter of the law. So in such a case, if you can peel it, peel it. You can't. Big deal. It's only a chumrah. But in a case where by the letter of the law, it exchanges flavors. For example, salting, that's by the letter of the law. All the examples that the Taz brings and that the Shach also brings with the salting, with the Gir Anasha, all of those are cases where the actual halacha is that you need to have a klipa, not a chumrah klipa, but the actual necessary klipa, either because salting spreads it or because it's still connected. A pour that's still connected is considered to actually need a klipa by the letter of the law.
And all the cases that is mutar adin, it's going to be...
That's also true. But not only mutar b'hana, but even mutar b'achila if it mixes in. Because it's only a chumrah. So we say lechatchila separated, but if you didn't, it's bottled.
Not the case where
no, the Gir Anasha is salting, and salting is by the letter of the law. So there you'll need 60 times. So this is a psak. This is a psak like the Magen Avram.
Salting doesn't penetrate or more inside?
No. No, we're gonna see about it that. Yeah.
And this meat during the salting fall into a milk, or milk fell in on it.
I mean, generally it's only a klipa, although we're going to see that if it's a fatty piece of meat, then it goes more than a klipa. And the Ramah says we don't know what fatty is, so usually the whole thing is awesome. But that's a chumrah. Yeah.
Are we going down in morning?
That's a good question.
I better run. You have to leave for 5 to go.
In 10 minutes.
You're kidding. Ahmed? All right. Okay.
10 minutes.
Thank you.
So the Magen Avram.
What time do you daven Ma'ariv?
I usually daven Ma'ariv at 10 o'clock here.
Okay.
Okay, so in the thing that I sent out, do we have many? No.
Do you have anybody else?
If you tell me, let me ask them if somebody is.
How many people do you have over there?
We have 9. Why? You have a friend in the area here?
No, I was just curious because there seemed to be a lot before and.
Yes, it's a big group tonight, Baruch Hashem. Okay, So, by the way, we're looking for some new students to fill in for the young guys.
They dropped out?
Yeah, they said they're dropping out.
No.
What's his name? Cohen and
Alex.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not sure why, but anyway, that's a good idea.
That's a good one. I have an idea. If somebody can stand there on the phone and doing this. Yeah. Sure.
All right.
Okay, Armenian.
Yeah.
There's a bank down the bottom.
Okay, Rabbi say, let me just go through the Magen Avram. In the notes that I sent out, I go through the different proofs of the Taz and Shach, and we see that it is all those cases. It is actually necessary to have the klipa by letter of the law. Number one, one is salted in a vessel without holes, then use the vessel for something hot. So, like we said, salting is necessary. That klipa is by the letter of the law. Yerodeh 91.5, the juice of forbidden meat comes after salting and landed on a kli. The kli needs to be kasher klipa. Or if this is not possible, it must be broken. Again, that is a case of a necessary klipa. Koret shel chiltas asfatita was called the Jewish knife is completely forbidden. Possible to have the klipa. Again, this is a klipa that's necessary by the letter of the law. If one poured from a meaty kli rishno as ben yameh onto a dairy kli, it becomes aser. This is talking about a case where it's lo nifsek hakiluach, right? The whole case in 95, when you're pouring water from meat onto a dairy, for it to be a promise only if it's still connected. And we said if it's still connected, then the pour is considered the peel in that case is considered necessary by the letter of the law.
Connected like what?
Like if you pour from a kettle and the water is still connected to the kettle, that's a case where
What about if you take my chicken?
then it's not connected.
Okay.
Then it's only going to be midrabanan. It's not going to have the power to cook, only to exchange flavors without cooking.
Is there a problem pouring from a kettle into a milchig utensil and it's connected? Does it go upwards?
If there is a problem pouring from a kettle into a milchig utensil, you mean in terms of then using the utensil for meat?
No.
Is that what you mean?
Let's say I have a parav kettle and I have a coffee mug that was used 2 hours ago but is now otherwise quite clean. I pour from the kettle into this mug and it's connected. Does that do anything negative to the kettle or the water inside the kettle?
No.
Even though it's all connected?
Correct. Because it's only noisen tam echad. It's only one noisen tam.
So it doesn't jump up from the milchig cup up into the kettle?
No, it can't, because it's a nat bar nat. You understand? There's no meat flavor in the kettle. The case of the Ramah is where there's a meat flavor coming down, milk flavor coming up. They meet in the middle. They make a shidduch, and you have a big problem.
But
if
only in
it's
the bottom one or in the top one?
They meet in the middle, and then they go back to where they came from and ruin everything.
So that
no,
means
they don't go back up. They don't go back up. It just goes down. Only the bottom one is a problem in that case.
Is what he's saying also applies.
So even though the bottom one is stronger, the bottom one ends up okay.
That's a rule.
I'm sorry?
Is what he's saying also apply to something like that, where people who will put their coffee cups up to it being dairy, and the steam will come up from the coffee cups. That's that dairy, the actual thing is supposed to sell.
Oh, that's a little bit more complicated. If you're pouring into milk, it's a little bit more complicated. Because there it's not a noisen tam, right? There it's the actual milk. So the question is, does the steam go back up and make it milk? That's the question. It's a question.
True, Max. I don't know. It's a coffee machine at work where I work at, and I never take from it because I don't know if it's there or if it's not.
Right. What Rabbi Forkash says in his Shabbos Kalacha is that the steam is only milchik if the bottom thing is hot from before. If it's steaming because it's hot milk, then the steam can go up and make something milchik. But if the steam is coming down from above and the bottom thing is not hot independently, that steam is not going to make the milk steamy enough to go back up in the big milk. That's his chiddush. I mean, it's not his chiddush. He probably gets it from earlier sources, but that's what I read there. Okay.
Oh, I had a thought.
Yes.
Not really related, but speaking about water. I happen to work in a pharmaceutical company at the moment. And one of the things that they have up on the walls is that wet hands transfer 500 times as many germs as dry hands. And I just thought that was interesting. Go on.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just recalling that a couple of weeks ago you sent out an email on Natilas Yadayim. I thought it was an interesting small fact that nowadays people are very cognizant of the fact that wet hands are, if not makabel tumah, then at the very least, there's a lot more transfer of nasty stuff going on when anything's wet, be it food or hands.
Right. I hear you. I do hear you. I mean, it is a pretty strict halacha that you have to dry your hands after washing them before you eat bread. To the extent that it's called eating tameh bread if you don't dry your hands.
All the bread was something.
I'm sorry?
Once all the bread was something like a napkin or...
Maybe it's okay. Yeah, maybe that's okay if you hold it. I don't see why not. Okay. Just to go through the proofs again. Yarden 94, if one cooked in a kli that became also through melicha, 180 opposite the klipa. Again, no, I'm on my notes. Going through the proofs of the Taz and the Shach according to the Magen Avraham, and explaining that it's either a necessary klipa because it's salting or because it's still connected. Number 6, if a goat was salted with its gida nasha and then cooked, you need 60 times around the klipa, because again, through salting, that klipa is a necessary thing. And finally, if one shechted a non-kosher knife and one cooked the meat without taking off a klipa, one needs 60 times a klipa. Again, that klipa is also necessary by the letter of the law. Okay, why the Taz doesn't ask on the Mechaber? This I addressed already. The Chavas Das explains that. All right, let's get
a question on that. We
Yes.
said if the milk is hot and the meat is hot, then the milk does become usher, right?
Yes, everything. Or for that matter, if the bottom one is hot, then again, everything becomes usher. If either the both hot or the bottom one is hot, then everything becomes usher.
Okay, so why can't this same logic be used when it's all hot?
What do you mean?
So that since it mixes in right away, it doesn't have the kerch to make any part of it usher. So what I understand that means is that since it keeps mixing and mixing, you're never going to have the problem of 1 in 60.
Yep.
So why can't we use this logic when everything's hot?
Because when everything is hot, then the flavor spreads from the entire meat into the entire milk. The point is, when the bottom one is cold and only the top one is hot, then it only has the power to extract a small amount of flavor, which would normally only be able to give flavor to only the surface level of the top one. And because there is no solid surface, so it never successfully imparts flavor to any particular part, and that's why it can be nullified.
Okay,
right?
so if it's a pot of hot milk and a piece of cold meat falls in, then
Exactly. So all of the flavor of the milk penetrates all of the meat. So unless you have, I mean, the meat is going to be also for sure, but unless you have 60 in the milk opposite the meat, the entire milk is going to be also as well, because all of the
so it all
flavor
happens at the same time.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, let's go through the points that I gathered from the Badei HaShulchan and address them. Some of them we brought up yesterday. Okay.
From your page?
From my page, yes. Points from the Badei HaShulchan. So what we've been discussing until now was top hot or bottom hot? We didn't really go into the question of whether the top is hot from a Kli Rishon or Kli Sheni. Is the bottom hot from a Kli Rishon or from a Kli Sheni? We never really addressed
For the
that.
purposes of this, is a ladle considered a Kli Sheni?
Generally, a ladle is a machlokes, and generally we should be strict and consider it a Kli Rishon.
So for Shabbos, we're strict.
Generally, yes, we should be, because it's a doubt. It's a machlokes.
Okay.
I mean, there are details in that, but generally. Okay, so here's the thing, my friends. Yes.
When you remove it,
Correct. As long as it's
not
on the fire.
anymore.
Correct. As long as it's in the original pot, it's called a Kli Rishon. You transfer it to a second pot, it's a Kli Sheni. So the question is, let's say the bottom one is hot, but it's a Kli Sheni. Do we say it has the power to heat up something that falls into it? So this is a machlokes, my friends. No, it's not the same machlokes. I'll tell you why. Because concerning Shabbos, it says in the Gemara, Kli Sheni eina mevashel. It says it clearly in the Gemara. Now, Tosfos proves from a different Gemara that it does cook some things. Some things. And we don't know what yes, what no, so we're strict with everything. Right, we're machmir in general in a Kli Sheni because we don't know what it cooks. It's broad about bread, but it's not specifically about bread. It's just that's the example. The point is that the klal, the rule is that Kli Sheni does not cook, but because we don't know which ones it does, we're strict. However, concerning other things, explains the Rashal that we have to be more strict than that, because concerning Shabbos, all we care about is cooking. When it comes to cooking, it doesn't cook in a Kli Sheni except for some things, which we should still be strict, but nevertheless, by the letter of the law, it doesn't cook for almost everything. When it comes to other Isurim, it's not just about cooking, it's about exchanging flavors, maflit and mavliya. So the Rashal says it has the power to be maflit and mavliya. It's not called cooking. Cooking is one thing, exchanging flavors is another one. But as far as the Isser of Basar BChalav, maflit and mavliya is an issue. Even a Kli Sheni has the power to be maflit and mavliya. What do you mean?
That the milk from Kli Sheni and the meat is in Kli Sheni.
Well, what's falling into what? I mean...
Either one. Because you have the power for the taste. Or one of them to be Kli Rishon, next taste to be mavli the taste. To mavli.
No, let's talk about the bottom one first. Let's talk about the bottom one first, because the bottom one is the one that wins. You understand? Tata Gavar. So let's talk about the bottom one. If the bottom one is a Kli Sheni, according to the Rashal, it has the power to heat the top one. Whether the bottom one is meat or milk, Kli Sheni, it has the power. Actually, speaking about meat, we have to touch upon another point that the Rashal holds. Famous opinion of the Rashal. The Rashal holds that any solid piece is always considered like a Kli Rishon. Because the walls don't cool it down. The Rashal explains that the only reason the contents of a Kli Rishon get the status of a Kli Sheni is because the walls of the Kli Sheni cool it down. But if you have a piece that does not spread out, because it's a solid piece, potato, piece of meat, whatever, so he says it retains the quality of a Kli Rishon, even if you put it into another keli. So that's another chiddush of the Rashal. So according to that, if the meat is on the bottom and it's hot, you don't even have to say that Kli Sheni has the power to exchange flavors. It's not a Kli Sheni, it's considered a Kli Rishon.
When
See what I'm saying?
Kli Rishon stop being a Kli Rishon temperature-wise?
When it's not Yad Zeledis boy.
In the case of a dog bush like that, is it a problem even from Ilah? Because it doesn't cool down in the tatar?
No.
So the Rishal doesn't know.
No. We need to explain that. In a case of a piece that's a davar gush, it's a solid piece that's falling and that's hot, that's falling down, even though it has the din of a kli rishon, but nevertheless, it can still be cooled off by the tatar.
Even though he holds that, even though the Rishal holds that it's not cooled off by the wall of the cliche.
Right, because there it's not contained in the walls, but here it's submerged in the liquid, so it can cool it off.
If you have like a beef soup with a piece of meat in it, and you transfer the whole thing into another cup. So for the soup himself, the liquid is
One second. I'm distracted. I can't listen because I'm distracted by Yaakov's question. The question is, one second. The question is if it's two solid pieces, if a solid falls onto a solid, and the top is hot and the bottom is cold, so the Rashal holds that it retains the qualities of a kli rishon. Nevertheless, we see clearly in the Gemara that it's only a kadei klipa that is exchanged. Why? Why do you say it's a kli rishon? So evidently, the answer is, it's actually a strong question on the Rashal. It's actually a strong question on the Rashal. Not sure.
But you mentioned when it's two solids, when it will be only the media, only when you touch them.
It's a good executive question.
One more time, what, sorry?
You said yesterday when it's too solid, the
Yeah.
issue only the media.
When they touch the pressure.
It doesn't spread.
Mm.
That's what you said yesterday. When it's too solid.
No, the question is as follows. Why, when a piece of hot solid falls onto another piece of hot solid, we say that the bottom one cools off the top one and does not allow the top one to give its flavor to the bottom one more than a kadei klipa? Right? That's the halacha. That's clear in the Gemara. Right? So if you're saying the bottom one cools it off to that extent, why don't you say, if it goes into a keli, that it should be considered cooled off in terms of it itself becoming like a klisheni and not having the power to cook something else that falls onto it? If it doesn't even have the power to cook what's underneath it, why should it now have the power to cook something else that comes on top of it? You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's your question. In case you didn't know, that's your question.
It's better to do it really from a 360. Well, we don't know.
I mean, we're going to have to give an answer, something like this. This is where we're getting a little bit lumdish. We're going to have to give an answer to something like this. We're going to have to say, in reference to what's on bottom of it, it doesn't have the power to travel. Its heat does not have the power to travel down. But that doesn't mean it's cooled off to the extent that it cannot affect something that comes on top of it. Meaning to say, concerning the tata, it doesn't have the power to overpower the tata, but it still has the power to act on as a tata for something else. You understand? That's what we have to say.
By nature, right?
Exactly. So it can be the ilah for its tata, but it can still be the tata for something else's ilah. Something like that. All right. What do you say?
So the beef soup,
Yes.
the piece of meat, you transfer to another pot.
Yes.
Clean.
Yes.
So the meat is going to be kli rishon.
No. See, in that case,
But you said,
no. Not if it's in a soup. Not if it's in a soup. That's because if it's on its own, if it's sitting on its own, then it's going to have the power of a kli rishon. But if it's sitting in soup, so the soup is a klisheni, and it's part of the soup, so it's also a klisheni. It only has this special halacha if it's sitting on its own without any liquid, which, if you think about it logically, it's hard to understand. Because a piece of meat sitting in the air is really going to cool off much faster than a piece of meat sitting in hot soup. Nevertheless, halachically, no. The soup has a kli sheni, so the meat becomes a kli sheni. But if it's on its own, it has a special koyach of a kli rishon. It's hard to understand. I mean, halachically, you can explain it, but physically, it's hard to understand.
So if you pick up a piece of meat by itself from the soup,
Yeah.
and this piece of meat fell into the milk, they have the din of rishon, this meat?
No, but pashtus, once it was part of a kli sheni, it's a kli sheni. Pashtus. I mean, just like when you take a kli sheni out of a kli sheni, it never goes back to being a kli rishon. Understand? Once it's a kli sheni, it could become a kli shlishi, but it can't go back to kli
No,
rishon.
according to Basar, said like salad always going to be as a din of a kli rishon.
That's because it was never affected by the kli sheni. But once it is affected, it's affected. That's it. That would be.
There's a physical example for that.
Yep.
So my wife is explaining to me that when you cook a really good piece of meat,
Yep.
you pull it out right before it's ready, and you do something called resting it,
Uh-huh.
which is you let it cook just a little bit more, sitting by itself on a plate.
Uh-huh.
Because it will continue to cook from the outside inward
Right.
as it goes through.
Right.
So that's resting the meat. But with a beef stew, you don't rest the beef stew.
Uh-huh.
You just rest the piece of meat by itself.
Uh-huh.
So it would be like how it works, I guess, in cooking.
So why not? Why is the stew different?
Because the stew, the way it cooks with the liquid cooks different.
I see. Maybe it's like more uniform, maybe.
Is it still on the fire?
No, yeah, like for example, when you're cooking a beef stew, you just leave it on until it's done. And then
Because I
turn it
know
off. That's not a problem.
when you're melting metal, okay, and you take your crucible off the fire, it still gets hotter after you take it off the fire.
Why?
But you would think it's off the fire, it would start cooling off.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets hotter. I don't understand why. I know what happens.
Because it's still in the creation, right?
Huh?
Even after you pour it?
No, I'm talking about it's in a crucible.
It's still in the crucible.
Okay, and you're melting, I don't know, gold or aluminum or whatever it is, and you take the temperature when it's on the fire. Then you pick up the crucible and you move it off the fire. It'll keep heating up for a while before it starts cooling down.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay.
There's no minion?
Yeah, there's no minion, sorry. Unless there's two of them.
Yes, only.
Okay, so I'm just reading from my notes here. As far as the hot milk on the bottom, some say it is only considered hot in a kli rishon. Others say even in a kli sheni or shlishi, the Torah is going for it, cannot cook, but it can give and receive taste as the rashal. In practice, it should be strict unless it will cause a financial loss. Iru from kli sheni, as far as the hot milk being poured, some say it only makes asr k'dei klipa if it's streaming directly from a kli rishon. Directly means lo nifsek kiluach, still connected. However, others say it can cause an exchange of flavors up to k'dei klipa even if it's being poured indirectly. This is the halacha, because we said it can exchange flavors back and forth even though it can't cook. Others say it can exchange flavors even if it's being poured from a kli sheni. It is best to be strict with this opinion unless it can cause a financial loss. So according to the BChalav, which is how we should follow in the first place, even if you're pouring from a kli sheni onto something cold, it can still give over a klipa's worth of heat and absorb a klipa's worth as well. Okay, gush, salad piece in a kli sheni. Some say that a salad piece retains the heat of a kli rishon even in the second keli. That's the rashal, we just said that. According to this opinion, if the meat is hot, it is always considered a kli rishon. One should be strict unless it causes a great financial loss. Okay, that's because both the Shach and the Taz pass like this rashal, by the way, as we're going to see. Okay, two salad pieces. This is from Siman 105, which we are not planning to get to, at least in this time around, so let's say it right now. In the case of two salad pieces, by the letter of the law, the bottom one can only heat up the top one up to a kedei netila. My friends, listen carefully. Everything we've been learning until now about the bottom one heating up the top one completely is only solid and liquid. Or, for that matter, two solids in a pot with steam. If, however, it's two pieces, open air pieces, like a barbecue kind of situation, so then the bottom one will only have the power to heat up the top one. The top one is cold, bottom one is hot, only at Peel's depth. Not a peel's depth, K'dei Natila, a finger's depth.
How
Finger's
long is
depth.
a finger's depth?
I'm sorry?
How long is a finger's depth?
Like
that. You mean whose finger? I don't know, but not a vertical finger, a horizontal finger. Unless that I don't know.
Or a biblical egg's finger, biblical chicken.
Right. Unless one of the pieces is fatty, in which case this taste spreads all the way and it can only be nullified in 60. Because the fattiness of a piece spreads the flavor faster. In practice, the Ramah recommends that one should always consider that you need 60 as we don't know what is considered fatty. Okay, this is a theme that we have throughout Isra B'Heter, that the Ramah is very cautious. We don't know what's fatty, consider everything fatty. We don't know what's salty, consider everything salty. We don't know what's hot. No, I'm just kidding. Nothing else to say. But very often he says to err on the side of caution. And this is one of those examples. Okay, 3 reasons for Tata Gavar, which some of them I mentioned already. Heat rises. We mentioned that yesterday. The second one we mentioned also yesterday is the pressure of the top one going into the bottom one causes the bottom one to overpower the top one. So the fact that it's pushing into it kind of, it takes out the temperature from the bottom one into the top one. And this is a third one based on the Rashba, that because the bottom one is in its place, so it retains its temperature better than the top one that is coming, that is changing its place. Okay, when the meat sinks beneath the surface of the milk, most opinions say it is still considered like the top one, like we mentioned. Some say that it is considered like the bottom one. Best to be strict. This is a chiddush, and it's an opinion that we did not learn yesterday. Some say not like I think it's the Rashba, who says that top and bottom is not physical top and bottom. It's which is moving and which is stationary. Whichever is stationary is considered the bottom. Whichever is moving is considered the top. So even though the milk ends up beneath the meat, but it started off on top, so it's considered on top. That's the opinion of the Rashba. However, there is another opinion, I think it's the Chavas Das, who says no, that since it ends up underneath, it has the properties of being underneath. And according to the Chavas Das, if the top is hot, but it ends up being on the bottom, it will have the power to heat up the meat on top of it. And in the first place, he says to be strict like the Chavas Das. So that is a significant chumrah.
To heat up the milk.
I mean, if the milk is hot, it will heat up the meat, even though the meat is cold. And according to most opinions, the meat is considered the bottom. Okay, side by side. Here's an interesting machlokes. If there's a piece of meat and cheese sitting side by side, one is hot and one is not. So here, there is no tata and there is no ilah. So nothing is cooling anything else off. They're equally powerful. So here you have 2 opinions. One opinion, which is the Ramah, says, well, nothing is overpowering the other. So you just have a basic exchange of flavors, which is a klipa. A klipa for both, correct. The Rashal has the chiddush. The Rashal says no. The hot one, because nothing is overpowering it, so it's staying hot, it will have the power to give its flavor into the cold. The cold is not going to give its flavor back into the hot because it's also not being overpowered by the hot. You understand? When the bottom one is hot, so the cold one that comes onto it is considered to become part of it, it's like it itself becomes hot. Here, each one retains its own identity. This is hot, this is cold. So the cold is not going to give the flavor back into the hot because it's not being overpowered by the hot. On the other hand, because the hot one is remaining hot and nothing is stopping it from affecting the other one, so it has the power to impart its flavor to the other one. So the cold one is going to become asr. Let's say you have hot meat, cold cheese. The cheese will become asr, and the meat will remain mutter. I mean, a klipa you'll need. but it won't become asr completely. The whole cheese will become asr because the heat is spreading without anything stopping it, because there's nothing acting on it to cool it down, so it has the power to spread. But the spread of the cheese is not going to spread because it's not itself becoming hot.
We don't feel the words cold or hot. Like, gotcha, let's go.
You don't think that the cheese gonna melt on the meat?
Side by side, yes.
Hmm?
Side by side.
It's talking about side by side. Side by side, so you don't have a top and you don't have a bottom. One opinion says just do a klipa from both. The other opinion says that the hot one goes into the cold one, but not vice versa. So Yaakov is asking, why don't we just measure the temperature and make it simple?
Too simple.
For what?
Sorry?
For what? I want to measure.
Well, the question is,
One was cold, one was not.
one's cold, one is hot. So your question is, do you, eventually the hot one is going to cool down. That's not the question. The question is, why don't you measure the hot one and the cold one and see if it becomes hot?
If they're side by side, there's no pressure.
Right.
Unless you really, so the transfer is going to be minimal as compared to one's on top of the other.
Right, that's true.
So
You don't have any of the reasons that we mentioned before, you don't have. The three reasons why the bottom one should overpower, you don't have. You don't have heat rises, you don't have the pressure, and you don't have one in its place and one out of its place.
But even
But
if
on the
you
other
did,
hand,
what would happen if you had a cold piece of cheese and a hot piece of meat on top of it?
what would happen as
To the
far as
cheese.
what?
What would happen to the cheese in such an instance?
Just a klipa.
So I can't understand why side by side you'd have to get rid of the whole cheese. If you're smothering a piece of cheese with a piece of meat on top of it, you'd expect a lot more to sink into the cheese.
Well, the thing is that halachically we consider that the bottom one wins. So therefore, we consider that the cheese is cooling off the meat, and not vice versa. Whereas if they're side by side, so the meat is retaining its heat for longer, and therefore, because it's not being cooled off by anything, it has more power to.
It's being cooled off by whatever's underneath it, which is going to be just as cold as the cheese was, be it a plate or a table or whatever. Why not say?
I mean that. Even though it's being cooled off from below, that doesn't mean it can't affect what's on the side of it. You understand?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you'd expect it to affect what's on the side less than if it were on top.
I hear.
Oh,
I hear you.
Put it this way. Let's say you had a piece of meat. Let's say you had a piece of cheese shaped like a couch, and you put the piece of meat on top of one of the cushions of the couch. It's still touching the back of the couch, right? So that's a similar situation. Now, if we simply get rid of the cushions of the couch and then say it's just the side, we're in exactly the same place as we would be. In the first case, we say that the cheese is fine after a clipper. In the second case, where there's less touching the meat, then we're saying that the cheese is not fine at all. And from that perspective, it makes no sense. Sorry, it's difficult to understand. Or to put it even more plainly, we're saying that sitting on a couch affects it less than leaning on the side of a couch.
I hear your question. I don't have an easy answer. I don't have an easy answer. I don't know if I'll have an answer.
Hot bar hot.
Very good. I'm not sure. We'll continue in Mirz Hashem on, one second, I just see you asked a question. Does that mean the surface area of the meat is used for the calculation of 1/60 and not the volume of the entire piece of meat? In which case, Yossi, what were you asking in that question?
This was a while way back when we were talking about the meat falling into into the milk, and I was asking if, for the purposes of the milk, whether you calculate the 1/60th of the clipper from the outside, not the whole piece. So if a cold piece of meat falls into hot milk, then we don't consider the whole volume of the piece of meat, do we?
If the milk is hot and it's on the bottom, then you need 60 times the entire piece of meat. Yes.
I thought it's 60 times the clipper.
No, that's only if the top one is hot and the bottom one is cold. If the bottom one is hot, then you need 60 times the entire piece.
For the milk.
If there's more milk and you want, the meat is going to be also for sure. If you want the milk to be mutter, you need 60 times the size, the volume of the meat.
So the cold meat going into the hot milk, the meat is completely osir.
For no question, correct.
And the milk is right. Okay, I thought that it was just the surface, but it's the whole thing. Okay.
No, not if the bottom one is hot. All right, to be continued, Mirz Hashem, Shir 13 on Monday.
Is it possible that we're talking?
Yes, you'll send me the links, yes?
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
Thank
Is it
you.
possible that
Pleasure.
Side by side, we don't go by the Rashal.
Side by side, we don't go by the Rashal?
We go by the Imam. Because the Rashal's answer doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
Give me a second, let me see what the says. That's Marshall. B'makom she'ein hefsed merubah yesh lahachmir kain. The Taz says if it's not a big financial loss, you should be strict like the Rashal.
Even if it's quite a bit of block of cheese.
Well, then it'll be a big financial loss.
So listen, for full person can be a big loss. For same case can be small loss.
That's true. That is true.
That's like a
So you pass the difference to a poor
Absolutely.
I remember this with Mooks on Shabbos, what's Mooks considered